Thousands of lawyers across Pakistan begin a series of rallies and protests. They're demanding President Musharraf reinstate the senior judges he sacked last year. So, is this yet more pressure for a leader under fire? And how much of a test is this crisis for the fledgling coalition government? This is Inside Story. Hello, I'm Darren Jordan. Well, lawyers and political activists across Pakistan are taking part in rallies to demand the restoration of judges sacked by President Pervez Musharraf. The protests, due to end in the capital Islamabad on the weekend, aims to step up the pressure on Musharraf and force him to quit. But so far, Musharraf says he has no intention of resigning. Imran Khan has the story.
The banners are up as Lahore prepares to receive thousands of protesters on what's been called the Long March. They'll come from all over Pakistan and will meet here in Lahore before moving to the capital, Islamabad. Their final destination here will be the High Court. Significant because the men sat in the shade of the courthouse have tirelessly protested the sacking of the Chief Justice, a move that they say has destroyed any hope of democracy. They now eagerly await to hear his words. On Wednesday, lawyers will pack every square inch of this courtyard, listening to the words of the deposed Chief Justice of Pakistan, Mohammad Iftikhar Chowdhury. His message to them will be simple: restore the judiciary. But it won't just be a message to them. It's a message to the Pakistani government, who so far haven't been able to resolve the issue. The lawyers are now saying enough is enough. One leader of the movement, dubbed the Warrior Lawyer, says the message is loud and clear.
A march is aimed at making people realize, people in parliament, parliamentarians for one, they made promises on this issue before the elections of the 18th of February. It is aimed at making the institutions like civil and military bureaucracy realize that it is an imperative issue, and it is aimed at making the American and the British administrations who have not said a decibel or a syllable on the detention of the Chief Justice and his children and these 10 Supreme Court justices and their children for 5 long months.
On the streets of Lahore, not everyone agrees. One man saying the issue of the lawyers has diverted interest from the real issue, the economy.
Our economy has been badly damaged, so it does not need long marches. It should be lawful and legal.
As thousands gather on the Long March, many will see this as a watershed moment. The point where people join the lawyers as one. But will it force the coalition government to decisively deal with the key question, the restoration of the judiciary? With the coalition split over the issue, that remains to be seen. Imran Khan for Inside Story, Lahore.
Well, joining us to discuss this issue are our guests in Multan, Barbara SATTAR, political commentator and lawyer, who's also taking part in the protests. In Islamabad, Ahmed Raza Kasuri, President Musharraf's legal advisor. And in Dubai, JAVED MALIK, political analyst and commentator. Gentlemen, welcome to the programme. JAVED MALIK in Dubai, let me start with you, if I may. This isn't the first time that Pakistan's judiciary has been on the march. How significant is this one, do you think?
Well, this is perhaps the first time after the new government, the new democratically elected government has taken office. And obviously, as you know, that initially there was a Bourbon declaration which had delayed the protests. But since the commitments made there were not met, the lawyers' community then started this march. And it's interesting because the leader of the Supreme Court Bar Association, who is, of course, Etizaz Ahsan, is also a member and a former minister from the People's Party, who, of course, formed government in Pakistan. So it's a bit of an interesting situation. But at the same time, it is not just the lawyers that are marching on this occasion. You also have members of the civil society, and indeed, more significantly, members of the ex-servicemen society. These are all former generals and other officers of the army who have recently been speaking out openly against retired General Pervez Musharraf and asking not just for his removal, but also for his trial for abrogating the constitution twice. Okay, so a groundswell of support against President Musharraf. Let's go to Ahmed Raza Kasuri in Islamabad. I mean, will street protests be enough to force President Musharraf to resign?
Oh, certainly not, because General Pervez Musharraf was not elected from street. He was elected by both houses of the Parliament, National Assembly and the Senate, and all the 4 provincial assemblies of the country. So therefore, he has already said in his interview last week that he is prepared to accept the sovereignty of the Parliament, and that whatever Parliament decide, he would accept it. I mean, what could be a more democratic statement? And if they have the relevant strength at the floor of the House, why don't they take up the issue at the floor of the House? You don't bring violent changes through a street process. I mean, in America, there's a million march, but it doesn't mean that next day the President Bush is not there. You see, President Bush continues to be there. I mean, presently, both in the House of Representatives and the Senate, the Democrats are in majority.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean that President Bush has gone.
Okay, well, let's put that question to one of the gentlemen taking part in the protest, SATTAR. He's in Multan, where the protests are starting. What's been happening on the streets there, and how much support is there for the protests?
Well, it's the beginning of a process. Obviously, there are people coming from all over the country. There are people coming from Balochistan and Sindh who are going to get here to Multan in a couple of hours. But the argument being made by Mr. Kasuri is a false argument, because if General Bush were to amend the Constitution of the United States under the barrel of a gun and then dismiss the Supreme Court of the United States, there would be riots in the United States, and President Bush wouldn't be sitting in the White House. So that's a false argument. The issue is that there's never been an issues-based street movement before in the history of this country, and what we're seeing here is totally unprecedented. In scorching heat, people are coming out of their houses, not for food. These are not food riots. This is a movement for justice. And we've never seen something like this happen in this part of the world or in any other part of the world. So this is truly the finest point in the lawyers' movement.
JAVED Malik in Dubai. I mean, why is President Musharraf so worried about the judiciary? I mean, does he think that the reinstatement of the judges could lead to his possible impeachment?
Well, that is a question that perhaps he can answer, but what I can tell you is that it was him who removed the Chief Justice, and he didn't expect that the Chief Justice's removal could also trigger his own removal. My friend in Multan, what he says, I tend to agree with him, that, you know, it is not just a lawyers' movement anymore. People from all sections of the society are taking part, from all parts of the country. That includes even young people, old people, generals, retired generals. And it is becoming what is called a street protest. And Mr. Kasuri, when he says that the President Musharraf has been elected from the parliament, well, none of those parliaments exist anymore. He got elected from parliament which was on its twilight and, of course, ending its term. The parliament that exists right now overwhelmingly is against Mr. Musharraf. They comprises of Pakistan Muslim League N and People's Party and also the ANP. So if President Musharraf was to take an oath, or rather take a vote of confidence from this assembly, not just in the center but also in the provinces, I have my serious doubts whether he will succeed.
Mr. Kasuri, do you want to respond to that? Would President Musharraf lose a vote of confidence from this assembly?
Well, certainly, yes. Why not? I mean, he doesn't need, under the Constitution, there's no requirement of vote of confidence. What is required is that if they are not comfortable with him, there is a concept of impeachment, and for that you require 2/3 majority of the joint house. If they have, why not? They go ahead. But the mere fact that they have not brought from last 100 days this kind of a resolution, that speaks volume that President Musharraf has a required strength at the House. And let me tell you that this longish movement is causing now problem. There's a flight of capital in the country, and share market has bogged down. And this kind of a situation is creating a lot of tension in the country. I remember I read once, you know, in the French Revolution, when it became a very longish affair, one of the philosophers said, "Oh liberty, what crimes have been committed in thy name?" And in Pakistan, "Oh democracy, what insecurity, what instability, what poverty has been brought in the body politic of Pakistan."
Okay, let me just get a quick reaction there from JAVED Malik in Dubai, who's shaking his head.
Right.
JAVED Malik, what do you say to that?
Well, obviously, it's a little surprising because Mr. Kusuri himself is a lawyer and he claims to be a Democrat, and then he talks about, crimes being committed in the name of democracy. All the people have said, really, initially what he talked about, that why don't they impeach him? Well, when the government came into existence, the initial steps taken by the new government were not of confrontation. They wanted to resolve this issue by way of dialogue, and there was a constitutional package which was which is being consulted with and being introduced in Parliament. But it was subsequently, when things became rather kind of offensive between the two sides, that now we are hearing about impeachment, and the calculations may be different, but according to some legal experts, they do have the numbers for impeachment, and that is what Nawaz Sharif and Nasif Ali Zardari are now considering.
OK, gentlemen, stay with us, won't you? Because it's time for a short break now. But when we come back, can the current judicial stalemate be broken in Pakistan? And what's Musharraf's next move? Stay with us, more on that.